The maintenance bay of Outpost 7 hummed with the familiar sounds of grinding metal and sparking welders. Tom Rodriguez wiped grease from his hands as he watched his 8-year-old daughter Maya skip between the massive cargo ships, her red pigtails bouncing with each step. The girl had grown up in these hangars, turning wrenches before she could properly hold them, and treating the visiting alien crews like extended family. "Daddy, look," Maya called out, pointing toward the far end of the bay where a sleek vessel had just docked. "It's one of those pretty ships from the Draconian Empire." Tom squinted through his welding mask. The ship was indeed beautiful, all flowing curves and iridescent panels that shifted color in the artificial light. But something was wrong. Scorch marks decorated its hull, and one engine nacelle hung at an odd angle. Emergency foam still clung to sections where fires had been extinguished. A hiss of escaping atmosphere announced the ship's airlock opening. Tom expected to see the usual Draconian crew emerge, the proud, scaled humanoids who ruled one of the galaxy's most powerful empires. Instead, a single figure stumbled out, nearly collapsing against the airlock frame. Maya gasped, "Daddy, she's hurt." The Draconian was female, her usually pristine scales dulled, and several patches missing entirely. Her elegant robes hung in tatters, and a deep gash ran along her left arm, weeping golden blood onto the deck plates. Most shocking of all, this was clearly no ordinary citizen. The intricate crown fused to her skull, and the ceremonial markings on her neck identified her as royalty. Tom had seen enough wounded beings in his 20 years as a station mechanic to note genuine distress. He set down his tools and approached carefully, hands visible and non-threatening. Most aliens appreciated human directness, but Draconians were notoriously proud and quick to take offense. "Your Highness," he said, offering a slight bow. "I'm Tom Rodriguez, chief mechanic here. You look like you could use some help." The Draconian princess raised her head, revealing striking golden eyes filled with exhaustion and pain. When she spoke, her voice carried the musical quality typical of her species, but it trembled with weakness. "I am Princess HFY of the Third Royal House. My ship, my crew." She gestured helplessly at the damaged vessel. "Pirates. They came from nowhere, killed my guards, stole everything of value, left me to die in dead space." Maya had crept closer during the conversation, her young face creased with concern. "Daddy, she needs food. Look how skinny she is." Tom glanced at his daughter, then back at the princess. Maya was right. Beneath the regal bearing and ceremonial dress, HFY was clearly malnourished. Her scales clung to pronounced cheekbones, and her movements carried the careful economy of someone conserving energy. "Maya, go get the emergency rations from Locker 7, Tom instructed. "The good ones, not the recycled protein paste." "But, Daddy, those are for humans. What if dragon people eat different things?" Princess HFY made a sound that might have been laughter if it weren't so weak. "Dragon people," she repeated softly. "Your offspring shows wisdom. Draconians are obligate carnivores, but in truth, I have not eaten in 6 standard days. Even your preserved meats would be." She paused, pride warring with desperation. "Acceptable." Tom felt a familiar anger building in his chest. Throughout the galaxy, humans were often dismissed as a young, naive species. Their worlds were considered backwater, their technology primitive, their customs crude. Yet here was a princess of the mighty Draconian Empire, reduced to begging for scraps in a human repair station. "Maya's right," he said firmly. "You need food, medical attention, and probably a safe place to rest. This is neutral space, and you're under our protection now." The princess straightened, some spark returning to her golden eyes. "I cannot pay you. The pirates took everything, including my emergency funds. I have nothing to offer in exchange for your kindness." "Who said anything about payment?" Maya piped up, returning with an armload of ration packs. "Daddy always says helping people is just what you do. Like when Mrs. Peterson's cat got stuck in the air duct, or when the Centauri trader got food poisoning from bad fish." Zarathustra stared at the little girl, then at Tom, confusion clear on her scaled features. In her world, everything had a price. Every favor demanded payment or created debt. The concept of freely given aid seemed to bewilder her completely. Tom opened one of the ration packs and handed it to the princess. "Beef stew," he explained. "Real meat, not synthetic. Should be easy on your stomach." As Zarathustra ate with barely restrained hunger, Tom found himself thinking about the galaxy's power structures. The Draconian Empire controlled dozens of star systems and commanded fleets that could reduce worlds to ash. Yet here sat one of their princesses, grateful for a simple meal from a human child in a nowhere repair station. Maybe it was time the galaxy learned what human kindness really meant. 3 days passed before Princess Zarathustra emerged from the medical bay where Dr. Sarah Chun had been treating her injuries. The station's small but well-equipped medical facility had worked wonders, closing the worst wounds and treating the malnutrition that had left her barely able to stand. Maya had visited every day, bringing games, drawings, and endless chatter about life on the station. The princess had initially seemed overwhelmed by the child's enthusiasm, but Tom noticed how her posture relaxed whenever Maya entered the room. "The little one is unusual," Zarathustra remarked as Tom finished installing new power couplers in her ship's engine compartment. "Most younglings I encounter are taught proper deference. Your offspring speaks to me as if I were merely another adult." Tom wiped his hands on a rag, considering his words carefully. Maya doesn't see royalty or scales or rank. She just sees someone who needed help. That's how we try to raise our kids here. Judge people by their actions, not their titles. The princess was silent for a long moment, watching Maya chase a maintenance drone around the cargo bay, giggling as it beeped and flashed its lights in what appeared to be a game. "In my empire," Zarathustra said slowly, "children are taught hierarchy from the moment they can speak. Which houses to bow to, which bloodlines command respect, which species are beneath consideration. Your daughter would be considered poorly educated by our standards." "Maybe," Tom replied, checking the power readings on his tablet. "But she's happy, and she treats everyone with basic respect. Sometimes I think that's more valuable than knowing which fork to use at fancy dinners." A commotion near the main entrance interrupted their conversation. A group of figures in dark spacesuits strode into the bay, their movements aggressive and purposeful. Tom recognized the type immediately. Mercenaries, probably the same ones who had attacked the princess. The leader removed his helmet, revealing the scarred face of a Korthak warrior, one of the galaxy's most feared predator species. His yellow eyes swept the bay until they locked onto Zarathustra. "Princess," he growled, his voice carrying the subsonic rumble that made Korthak's speech so intimidating. "You've led us quite a chase. Time to finish what we started." Maya stopped playing and moved closer to her father, sensing danger even if she didn't understand it fully. Tom stepped protectively in front of both his daughter and the princess, tools still in his hands. "This is a neutral repair station," Tom said evenly. "No weapons, no violence. You want to conduct business, you follow our rules." The Korthak leader laughed, a sound like grinding stone. "Human rules? Your species barely controls 3 systems. You have no authority here." "Actually," came a new voice from the bay entrance, "they do." Commander Elena Vasquez of the United Earth Defense Force entered with a squad of Marines, their pulse rifles held at ready position. Tom felt a surge of relief. Elena was an old friend who had grown up on this very station. Korthak mercenaries operating in neutral space without proper documentation. Elena continued, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "That's a violation of about 12 different treaties." The Korthak warrior's expression darkened. "This is not your concern, human. We have legitimate salvage rights to that ship and its passenger." "Salvage rights." Princess Zarathustra stepped forward, her royal bearing reasserting itself despite her recent ordeal. "You murder my crew and left me to die. That is piracy, not salvage. The Draconian Empire has fallen," the mercenary snarled. "Your father's fleets are scattered, your world's in rebellion. You are worth nothing now except what certain parties will pay for a former princess. Tom felt Maya's small hand slip into his as the implications became clear. These weren't just pirates. They were slavers, planning to sell Zara-THYSS to whoever would pay the most. The thought made his blood boil. "Elena," he said quietly, "Maya's right here." Commander Vasquez nodded and gestured to one of her Marines. "Sergeant Williams, would you mind showing Miss Maya the new targeting systems on the patrol ship? I think she'd find them fascinating." Maya looked between her father and the tense standoff developing in the bay. At 8 years old, she was smart enough to recognize when adults needed to handle adult problems. "Will the dragon lady be okay?" she asked softly. Tom knelt down to meet her eyes. "We're going to make sure she's safe, sweetheart. That's what we do for friends." After Maya left with the sergeant, the atmosphere in the bay grew even more charged. The Korthak leader stepped closer, his mercenaries spreading out to flank the Marines. "You cannot protect her forever," he said. "The empire that once made her valuable is crumbling. Soon, she will have nothing and no one." "Wrong," Tom said, surprising everyone by stepping forward. "She's got us." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Tom wasn't a soldier or a diplomat, just a mechanic with grease under his fingernails and a daughter who believed in doing the right thing. But something in his voice made the Korthak pause. "You would risk conflict with our clients for one fallen royal?" the mercenary asked. "We'd risk conflict for any person in need," Elena interjected. "That's what humans do. Maybe it's time the galaxy learned that." Princess Zara-THYSS stared at the small group of humans standing between her and certain death or slavery. Her people had ruled star systems when humanity was still discovering fire, commanded fleets that could shatter worlds, built empires that spanned light years. Yet here, in a simple repair bay, she found something her civilization had never offered her. People willing to risk everything for a friend. The Korthak leader's hand moved toward his sidearm, and Tom realized the talking was over. Whatever came next would determine not just the princess's fate, but possibly the future relationship between their species. Maya's innocent question echoed in his mind. "Can I share mine?" Sometimes, sharing meant more than just food. The tension in the bay shattered when the Korthak leader drew his plasma pistol. Elena's Marines reacted instantly, their training kicking in as they raised their weapons. But Tom was faster than anyone expected. The heavy wrench in his hand caught the mercenary's wrist with a satisfying crack. The plasma pistol clattered across the deck as the Korthak howled in pain and rage. Years of handling massive machinery had given Tom surprising speed and accuracy when it mattered most. "Bad idea," Elena said coolly as her Marines trained their weapons on the remaining mercenaries. "This station is under Earth protection. Assault on civilians is a capital offense." The firefight that followed was brief, but intense. Korthak were tough, but Earth Marines had learned hard lessons in a dozen border conflicts. Their armor was better, their tactics more refined, and their motivation unshakable. When the shooting stopped, 3 mercenaries lay dead, and the rest were in restraints. Tom checked on Princess Zara-THYSS, who had taken cover behind a cargo container during the fight. Her golden eyes were wide with shock, not at the violence, but at what she had witnessed. "You fought for me," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Humans barely know me, yet you risked your lives. That's what friends do," Tom replied simply. Elena approached, holstering her sidearm. "We'll transport the survivors to the nearest judicial station, but, Tom, this isn't over. Word will spread that humans are protecting draconian royalty. That's going to bring attention we might not want." "Good," Tom said firmly. "Maybe it's time the galaxy knew where we stand." Over the following weeks, Outpost 7 became an unlikely center of interstellar politics. News of the incident spread through the trade networks, and reactions varied wildly depending on who was listening. The remaining Draconian Empire leadership sent a formal thank you message, but little else. They were too busy fighting civil wars to spare resources for one stranded princess. Other royal houses offered token support, but no real aid. Princess Zara Thyss found herself effectively abandoned by the very system she had been born to serve. Maya, however, had different ideas. "Daddy," she announced one morning over breakfast, "I think Zara needs a job." Tom nearly choked on his coffee. "Sweetheart, she's a princess. They don't really do jobs the way we understand them." "But she's really smart," Maya insisted. "Yesterday, she helped me fix the broken stabilizer on Dock 3. She knows all about engines and power systems. And she's been teaching me draconian math. Did you know they count in base 16? Tom found himself considering the idea seriously. The station did need additional technical staff, and Zara Thyss had demonstrated surprising practical knowledge during her recovery. Her royal education had included engineering and ship design, skills that translated well to maintenance work. The conversation became academic when Princess Zara Thyss herself requested a meeting. "Tom Rodriguez," she began formally, then paused and tried again. "Tom, I have a proposition for you." They met in the station's small conference room, with Maya coloring at a side table and Commander Elena listening via video link from her patrol ship. "The Draconian Empire is collapsing," Zara Thyss said without preamble. "My father's fleets are scattered, the royal houses are at war, and our world are declaring independence daily. Within a year, the empire that has existed for 3,000 years will be nothing but history." Tom nodded. They had been monitoring the news feeds, watching the slow dissolution of one of the galaxy's great powers. "There are thousands of Draconians fleeing the chaos," she continued. "Civilians, minor nobles, merchants, even some military units loyal to the old ways. They need somewhere to go, somewhere safe to rebuild. And you want them to come here?" Elena asked from a screen. "Not just here. I want to propose an alliance. Draconians have advanced technology, extensive trade networks, and organizational experience. Humans have something far more valuable: the willingness to help strangers, to fight for principles rather than profit." Maya looked up from her drawing. "You want to be friends with all the humans?" Princess Zara Thyss smiled, the first genuine smile Tom had seen from her. "Yes, little one. I want our peoples to be friends." The proposal was ambitious beyond anything Tom had imagined. Zara Thyss outlined plans for joint colonies, shared research projects, and defensive alliances. She spoke of draconian agricultural knowledge that could turn barren worlds into gardens, medical techniques that could extend human lifespans, and energy technologies that could power entire civilizations. "What's in it for you?" Tom asked bluntly. "Survival," she replied honestly. "My people are proud to a fault. We would rather die than admit weakness or ask for help. That pride is killing us now. We need to learn human virtues, cooperation, adaptability, the willingness to help those in need." Elena leaned forward on the screen. "The Earth Council will need to approve any formal alliance. That could take months. Then we start small," Tom said, an idea forming. "Zara, you said there are refugee ships heading this way?" 3 vessels, carrying about 200 civilians. They should arrive within the week." Tom looked at Maya, who was listening intently despite her apparent focus on her artwork. His daughter had started this whole chain of events with a simple act of kindness. Maybe it was time to think bigger. "Outpost 7 can house maybe 50 people comfortably," he said slowly. "But there are 12 other repair stations in this sector. If we coordinate resources, share supplies, a refugee network," Elena finished, understanding immediately. "Each station takes what they can handle, pools resources and expertise. And if anyone tries to attack refugee ships," Maya asked innocently. Tom and Elena exchanged glances. The 8-year-old had identified the key question. "Then they learn what happens when you threaten human friends," Elena said grimly. Princess Zara Thyss stared at them all, her golden eyes bright with something that might have been hope. "In 3 days, I have watched a child offer food to a stranger, seen a mechanic fight trained killers to protect someone he barely knew, and observed soldiers risk their lives for principle rather than profit. Perhaps my people can learn to be worthy of such friendship." Maya held up her drawing, stick figures holding hands under a bright yellow sun, with friends written in crayon across the top. "We're already friends," she said matter-of-factly. "Friends help friends. That's what Daddy taught me." Tom realized they were no longer talking about helping a few refugees. They were discussing the foundation of an alliance that could reshape the balance of power in their corner of the galaxy. All because his daughter had wanted to share her lunch. The first refugee ship arrived 3 days ahead of schedule, limping into dock with engine failures and a hull breach that spoke of desperate flight. Tom watched through the observation deck as Princess Zarathustra, who now insisted everyone call her simply Zura, coordinated the docking procedure with practiced efficiency. "Daddy, why do they look so scared?" Maya asked, pressing her nose against the viewport. The refugees emerging from the ship moved with the careful, hunted expressions of people who had lost everything. Draconians were naturally proud beings, but these individuals kept their heads down, their ornate scales dulled by stress and malnourishment. "They've been through something terrible," Tom explained gently. "But they're safe now." The ship carried 147 refugees, far more than Outpost 7 could accommodate. Tom had spent the previous days coordinating with other station commanders, calling in favors and appealing to their better nature. The response had surprised him. Station Commander Park at Depot 9 had immediately volunteered to take 30 refugees. Chief Morgan at Waypoint Station offered housing for 25. Even old Captain Thompson, who ran the most isolated repair platform in the sector, gruffly admitted he could squeeze in a few. Humans, Zara had observed while reviewing the accommodation lists, are remarkably difficult to predict. Your species makes decisions that would puzzle most galactic philosophers. "We're not that complicated," Tom replied. "People need help. We help them. Simple as that." But as the weeks passed, Tom realized the situation was far from simple. The refugees brought skills and knowledge that transformed the mundane repair stations into something approaching small cities. Draconian engineers improved power efficiency by 30%. Their doctors introduced medical techniques that eliminated several common spacer ailments. Agricultural specialists began growing fresh food in previously unused sections of the stations. Maya had become something of a celebrity among the refugees. Her cheerful disregard for species differences and innocent questions about draconian culture had endeared her to even the most reserved individuals. She learned to count in base 16, picked up conversational draconian, and somehow convinced a former imperial chef to teach her how to prepare traditional scale meat dishes. "Your offspring has become quite the diplomat," Zara remarked one evening as they watched Maya playing a complex draconian strategy game with a group of refugee children. "She just likes making friends," Tom said proudly. The real test came when the second wave of refugees arrived, not fleeing civilians this time, but 3 draconian military vessels carrying displaced soldiers and their families. The ships were battered but functional, their crews tired but still disciplined. Commander HFY Mythos, a grizzled veteran with scars covering half his face, requested permission to speak with Tom privately. Mechanic Rodriguez, the commander, began formally, "My soldiers carry weapons and training that could level this station. Yet your Princess Zara tells me you offer sanctuary without conditions or constraints." Tom studied the alien officer carefully. "Are you planning to level the station?" "Of course not. But surely you understand the risk." "Commander, 3 months ago my daughter offered to share her lunch with a stranger. Today we're housing over 400 draconian refugees across 12 stations. Risk is relative." HFY was quiet for a long moment. "In 40 years of military service, I have never encountered a species like yours. You make tactical decisions based on emotional responses. It should result in disaster. Yet somehow it works," Tom finished. "Yeah, we get that a lot." The integration of the military refugees proved surprisingly smooth. The soldiers were eager to contribute, taking over security duties and helping with the more dangerous maintenance tasks. Their families brought additional expertise in advanced technologies and organizational systems. But the real change came when Earth Command finally responded to Elena's reports. Admiral Chun arrived aboard the heavy cruiser Wellington, accompanied by a full diplomatic team and enough firepower to make even Korthak raiders think twice about approaching human space. Tom found himself in the surreal position of briefing a flag officer while Maya sat nearby, teaching a young Draconian how to braid friendship bracelets. "So let me understand this," Admiral Chin said, reviewing her tablets. "In 3 months, you've created an informal alliance with over 400 Draconian refugees, established a mutual aid network spanning 12 stations, and managed to convince their princess to renounce her claim to the imperial throne." "Well," Tom said uncomfortably, "when you put it like that, Daddy didn't convince anybody," Maya piped up without looking away from her braiding. Zara decided all by herself. She said being a princess in a broken empire is silly, but being friends with humans is smart. Admiral Chin blinked. "And that's the official position of the former Draconian royal house." "Pretty much," Tom confirmed. The formal negotiations that followed were unlike anything in diplomatic history. Instead of meeting in sterile conference rooms, the talks took place in maintenance bays and mess halls with refugee families and human workers participating freely in discussions about trade agreements and defense pacts. Maya became the unofficial mascot of the proceedings, charming diplomats from both species with her straightforward questions and obvious affection for her Draconian friends. When one particularly stuffy Earth negotiator suggested that the refugees should be properly processed and relocated, Maya asked innocently why they couldn't just stay with their human friends. The question derailed 2 hours of careful diplomatic language in favor of honest discussion about what the alliance should actually accomplish. "The child speaks wisdom," Commander Tichwesisek observed during one session. "Perhaps we adults overcomplicate matters that are fundamentally simple." By the end of the month, the framework for a formal alliance had been established. The Human Draconian Cooperative would be based on mutual aid, shared defense, and joint colonization of suitable worlds. Refugee settlements would become permanent colonies with full citizenship, rights for their inhabitants. Princess Zara accepted the position of coordinator for Draconian affairs, effectively making her the bridge between two civilizations. When asked why she had given up her royal title for what amounted to a civil service job, her answer was simple. "My daughter Maya taught me that helping people is more important than fancy titles," she said, using the human concept of honorary family relationship that had become common among the refugees. Tom couldn't help but smile at how naturally she had adopted Maya's worldview. The signing ceremony was held in Outpost 7's main cargo bay, the same space where Tom had first met a desperate princess 3 months earlier. Representatives from both governments attended, along with refugee families and station personnel. Maya, wearing her best dress and a friendship bracelet made by Draconian children, stood between Tom and Zara as the documents were formally sealed. "Daddy," she whispered as the ceremony concluded, "does this mean we get to help even more friends?" Tom looked around the bay at the mixed crowd of humans and Draconians, all celebrating the beginning of something unprecedented in galactic history. "Yeah, sweetheart," he said softly. "I think we're going to help a lot more friends." 2 years after the signing ceremony, Outpost 7 had grown beyond all recognition. What started as a simple repair station now sprawled across 3 interconnected platforms, housing permanent populations of both humans and Draconians. Gardens created by Draconian agricultural specialists provided fresh food, while human engineering had improved living conditions throughout the complex. Maya, now 10 years old and fluent in 4 galactic languages, served as an unofficial ambassador to the dozens of new refugee groups that arrived monthly. Word of the Human Draconian Cooperative had spread throughout the galaxy, attracting displaced populations from conflicts across known space. "Daddy, the Centauri ship is requesting dock space," Maya announced, bouncing into Tom's workshop where he was training a group of Draconian apprentices in power systems repair. "Captain Veltar says they have 73 refugees who heard about our alliance." Tom wiped his hands on his coveralls and smiled. Maya had developed an uncanny ability to remember every detail about incoming ships and their passengers. Her natural curiosity and complete lack of prejudice made her perfect for first contact situations. "Tell Captain Veltar we'll make room," Tom said, and asked Zara to review the integration protocols. The former princess had become indispensable as the cooperative grew. Her royal education in administration and logistics, combined with hard-learned lessons about practical governance, made her uniquely qualified to manage the complex task of settling refugees from dozens of different species. The Outpost 7 success story had been replicated throughout human space. Refugee settlements had grown into thriving colonies, contributing advanced technologies and cultural diversity to human civilization. In return, human values of cooperation and mutual aid were spreading throughout the displaced populations. But success brought new challenges. "Tom," Commander Elena called over the comm system, "we've got company." 3 hegemony dreadnoughts just dropped out of hyperspace. Tom felt a familiar knot in his stomach. The galactic hegemony represented the old order, a collection of established powers who viewed the human draconian cooperative as a dangerous precedent. They had been making increasingly aggressive diplomatic protests about unauthorized alliance formation and disruption of established territorial boundaries. "Maya, go find Zara and tell her we need an emergency council meeting," Tom instructed. "Then, head to the shelter areas with the other children." "But, Daddy, what if the scary ships want to talk?" "I could help translate if they speak hegemony standard." "Not this time, sweetheart. This is adult business." The council chamber had been designed as a fusion of human practicality and draconian aesthetics. Representatives from both species sat around a circular table that accommodated different physical requirements while promoting equality of discussion. Admiral Chun participated via hologram from Earth Command, while other colony representatives joined through quantum communication links. The sight of humans and draconians working together still amazed Tom, even after 2 years. Hegemony Fleet Commander Crix ADH is demanding to speak with whoever has authority over this illegal territorial expansion, Elena reported from the Wellington's bridge. Zara's scales flickered with the draconian equivalent of dark amusement. "Commander Crix ADH. I know him from the old diplomatic corps. Arrogant, inflexible, and completely convinced of hegemony, superiority." "What does he want?" Tom asked. "Officially? To discuss territorial violations and unauthorized alliance formation," Admiral Chun replied. "Unofficially, the hegemony is terrified. We've proven that cooperation works better than domination. That threatens everything their power structure is based on." Tom stood and walked to the chamber's viewport, looking out at the bustling activity of the station. Human and draconian workers moved together seamlessly, while ships from a dozen different species docked for repairs or refuge. Children of multiple species played together in the recreational areas, their laughter echoing through the corridors. "They want to destroy this," he said quietly. "Not just the station or the alliance. They want to destroy the idea that different species can work together as equals. The question," Zara said softly, "is whether we fight or negotiate." The debate that followed revealed how much both species had learned from each other. The humans had gained appreciation for long-term strategic thinking and careful planning. The draconians had embraced flexibility and the willingness to take principled stands regardless of the odds. "We tried their way for 3,000 years, Commander HFY Sisek pointed out. Hierarchy, domination, species superiority. It gave us endless wars and the collapse of our empire. And we've seen what cooperation can accomplish in just 2 years," Helena added. "Prosperity, peace, and genuine friendship between species." The decision, when it came, was unanimous. Tom found himself aboard the Wellington an hour later, accompanying Admiral Chun to the parley with the hegemony fleet. He felt oddly calm, considering he was about to confront 3 ships that could reduce Outpost 7 to debris. Maya had insisted on coming to the docking bay to see him off. "Daddy, remember what you taught me about helping friends?" What's that, sweetheart? Sometimes helping friends means standing up to bullies, even when they're bigger than you. Commander Crix ADH proved to be exactly as Zara had described, a tall, imposing being from the Dominus species, with 4 arms and an attitude that screamed imperial arrogance. He listened to their presentation about the cooperative with barely concealed contempt. "You speak of friendship and cooperation," he said dismissively. "Pretty words from a primitive species that barely controls a handful of systems. You have created an unstable precedent that threatens galactic order." "What kind of order?" Tom asked bluntly. "The kind where refugee ships get hunted by slavers while established powers ignore the suffering. The strong rule, the weak serve," Crix ADH replied as if stating an obvious truth. "This has been a natural order since civilizations first reached the stars." "Natural?" Admiral Chin laughed. "Commander, there's nothing natural about a system that requires constant warfare to maintain itself. We've proven there's a better way." The negotiations continued for hours, with the hegemony demanding the dissolution of the cooperative and the return of all refugees to their proper territorial boundaries. Tom found himself thinking about Maya's friendship bracelets and Zara's quiet transformation from imperial princess to refugee advocate. Finally, Crix ADH played what he clearly considered his trump card. "You have 3 hours to begin evacuation procedures. If you refuse, we will enforce hegemony authority through military action." Tom stood slowly, feeling the weight of responsibility for thousands of lives under his protection. "Commander," he said quietly, 2 years ago, my 8-year-old daughter asked if she could share her lunch with a hungry stranger. That simple act of kindness started everything you see here. If you want to destroy that because it threatens your ideas about strength and weakness, then you'll have to go through us." The silence that followed was broken by Admiral Chen's communication device, chirping with an incoming message. "Sir," her aide reported, "we're receiving support confirmation from the Centauri Defense Force, the Free Worlds Alliance, the Independent Colonies Confederation, and 17 other governments. Total fleet strength, approximately 400 vessels, all requesting coordinates for emergency assistance." Crix ADH's 4 eyes widened in shock. Impossible. They would not risk war with the hegemony for a collection of refugees. "They're not fighting for refugees," Tom said with sudden understanding. "They're fighting for an idea. The idea that species can work together instead of fighting each other. The idea that strength comes from helping others, not dominating them." Through the viewport, Tom could see the first Allied ships dropping out of hyperspace. Within minutes, the 3 hegemony dreadnoughts were vastly outnumbered by a coalition fleet representing dozens of species and governments. Maya had been right, as usual. Sometimes helping friends meant standing up to bullies, even when they seemed bigger and stronger. But as the hegemony ships withdrew without firing a shot, Tom realized the real victory wasn't military. They had proven that cooperation could inspire others, that kindness could become a force more powerful than any weapon. Later, as celebration parties erupted throughout the station and Allied fleet, Tom found Maya in her favorite spot on the observation deck, drawing pictures of all the different ships that had come to help. "Daddy," she said without looking up, "I think we're going to need bigger lunch tables." Tom laughed and hugged his daughter close, watching as a galaxy slowly learned what human friendship really meant.